and call that a bogus, a valid jihad. It was not a valid jihad. You don't fight a jihad with weapons from Saudi Arabia and money from Saudi Arabia, no. And get the world of Islam to turn away from China. They feed the weapon, the state-of-the-art weapons and the money to the Chinese Muslims who will now rise up against Russia and China.
I believe that the Chinese Communist Party's aim is to be dominant in this region and perhaps dominant in the world. And this is a zero-sum game. It must remove America from the Western Pacific in order to be dominant in this region. Simple as that.
Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes.
US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is planning to visit the island next month. She would be the highest-ranking US elected official to visit since 1997.
I think that it's important for us to show support for Taiwan.
It's quite serious, folks. If the US House of Representatives Nancy Pelosi makes the promised trip to Taiwan, then things will escalate between the US and China.
Now, Joe Biden has recently said that the US military doesn't think it's a good idea for Nancy Pelosi to travel to Taiwan at this point in time, but there is a growing number of both Republicans and Democrats in Washington who are urging her to press ahead with these plans, saying that she shouldn't bow to pressure.
China considers Taiwan its territory, and the trip Nancy Pelosi is planning is said to take place around August. That's according to a number of reports. Will she go or won't she go? I don't know. It's very difficult to tell. So far, everyone thinks it's a bad idea, and the Chinese are already firing shots. The Chinese Defense Ministry has said the Chinese army won't sit idly by if the US House Speaker Pelosi visits Taiwan. They say that the visit will seriously violate the One China principle, harm the military relations between China and the United States, and lead to an aggravation of the situation in the Taiwan Strait. You see, folks, the United States is up to its tricks again. It wants to ignite a war situation in Asia. Even Joe Biden himself was talking about Nancy Pelosi's visit to the island. He said the military doesn't think it's a good idea right now. And I also think the United States are bluffing. For example, the US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan didn't answer reporters whether the US military was going to defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese military operation.
After what the Obama administration did and didn't do in Syria, after Hong Kong, Crimea, what the previous administration did to the Kurds, now Ukraine, where we've ruled out direct defense, why not be clear about our willingness to come to Taiwan's aid if China acts aggressively against it? How, particularly given what we've done in Ukraine, how do we explain why we would be prepared to help Taiwan if we're not prepared to help Ukraine?
Well, I think the U.S. position when it comes to Taiwan actually is clear, because it's a position that we have sustained to maintain peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait for decades. It is rooted in the One China policy, the Taiwan Relations Act, the 3 communiques, and the Taiwan Relations Act is a unique instrument. We don't have it with other countries. We don't have it with Ukraine.
Because they're quite well aware, a fight with China, especially since the Ukrainian crisis is raging without an end, can finally finish off the American economy. And don't forget, many American firms have all their production concentrated in mainland China. But there are hawks in the US who are pressuring the US government to face China. A lot of them believe that it's actually China and not Russia that poses a greater threat to the United States. For example, former Defense Secretary Mike Esper said it was time for Washington to move away from strategic ambiguity and make it clear that America would not allow an invasion of Taiwan. And former Secretary of State Fat Mike Pompeo announced that he would go to the island with Pelosi.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
And that's the thing, China is not Iraq nor Libya, and Taiwan doesn't have that many radicals the US can use to manipulate the situation. I'll tell you why neither the Chinese want to fight. But before I do, I want to explain the story between China and Taiwan. For a long time, Beijing pursued a policy of one country, two systems, preferring to negotiate with the authorities of the island for a gradual transition under the control of the Chinese authorities. But now in Taiwan, supporters of independence have taken over, thanks to American money, of course. And they refuse to negotiate the return of the island under the wing of China, and of course, the Americans are not interested in such a return either. Despite that, China has not invaded Taiwan and has no plans to do so if there's no outside influence, and that's the truth. Going back to the beginning, the first known settlers in Taiwan were Austronesian tribal people who are thought to have come from modern-day southern China. From the 17th century, significant number of migrants started to move from China, often fleeing turmoil or hardship. Most were what known as Hoklo Chinese from the Fujian province, or Hakka Chinese, largely from Guangdong. The descendants of these two migrant communities are now by far the largest demographic groups on the island. Yes, the Taiwanese people are Chinese. But sovereignty of Taiwan is a complicated issue. To put it in a nutshell, the Republic of China is the name of the government started in 1911 in mainland China. The ROC government relocated to Taiwan in 1949 while fighting a civil war with the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese Communist Party grew and took over mainland China. Since then, the ROC has continued to exercise effective jurisdiction over the main island of Taiwan and a number of outlying islands, leaving Taiwan and China under the rule of different governments. I know it's confusing. There's two Chinas. The Americans have a dream of overthrowing the Chinese Communist Party of Xi Jinping so the ROC can return to mainland China and rule. That's the idea. My friends, I hope you're seeing a pattern here. We see a similar pattern to Ukraine, as Ukrainians are Russians, the Taiwanese are Chinese, and the Americans are experts in making brothers fight one another, and they want to repeat the same Ukrainian pattern in Taiwan. Western media close to the deep state are actively peddling news about China's imminent invasion of the island territory. One of the arguments used by Western media is the increased activity of the Chinese Air Force and Navy, which have increased the number and quality of patrols near the island. However, don't be fooled by Western propaganda. From a military point of view, China is certainly capable of defeating Taiwan's army. Only in neighbouring Shanghai already, the third large amphibious assault ship has been launched in 2 years. It's a type of ship employed to land and support ground forces on enemy territory, but the need for such a ship is rather doubtful. I say this because you have to look at the big picture. China's rhetoric is directed mainly against the United States and Japan, not against Taiwan. Have you guys ever seen China threaten Taiwan? I haven't. Neither the Taiwanese. In fact, the Taiwanese issue can only result in a ground operation by China in Taiwan if there was to be an increased military presence of the United States and its satellite countries on the territory of the island. But if that doesn't happen, China has no interest in this so-called invasion of Taiwan. There's a good reason for that. Taiwan has a marvelous semiconductor industry which China benefits from. It plays a key role in global electronics production. The Americans think this indicates an economic incentive for a potential takeover of Taiwan. Also, let me introduce you to one of the biggest companies on the planet, TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, a company worth over $300 billion, whose factories were proposed to be preemptively blown up by American experts. It's a world leader in the production of trace elements for household and specialist computer equipments. The Chinese have a huge stake in it, and they wouldn't want to disturb their own business by invading the island. TSMC accounts for over 50% of the production of global semiconductor chip market, and in the foreseeable future, this situation will only continue to rise. Why would China want to disturb all that good technology stuff, especially since China is rising and needs the technology? Doesn't make any sense. The closest competitor to TSMC is Global Foundries, which has no more than 10% of the market share. Equipment for Chinese Huawei, American Apple are powered by buy TSMC products. China already benefits, and that's why by invading they wouldn't want to destroy the economic benefit Taiwan brings to China today. My dear friends, it's so sad to see the relentless anti-China propaganda today. It's happening everywhere, in the West as well as the Muslim world and India. It keeps people ignorant of achievements of Chinese socialism and truly prevents us from learning from China's experience. And it's not just the West plastering anti-Chinese propaganda everywhere. We also have Palki Sharma from WION news channel, who continuously promotes one India policy over Kashmir, but then sides with the United States when it concerns China and Taiwan. I wonder how she deals with cognitive dissonance, you know, the mental conflict that occurs when a person's behavior and beliefs don't align.
When I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto in West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.